What makes a superhero truly unforgettable? Is it their incredible powers, their battles against evil, or something even deeper, their humanity? The answer lies in the genius of Stan Lee, a man who didn't just create superheroes, but redefined what they could be. From the colorful pages of comic books to the billion-dollar Marvel Cinematic Universe, his work shaped the modern pop culture landscape like few others. But behind his larger-than-life persona lies a story of ambition, innovation, and controversy. While he brought beloved characters like Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four to life, his legacy is also marked by debates over creative credit, legal disputes, and the struggles of those who helped build Marvel's empire. In this video, we'll explore Stan Lee's journey from humble beginnings to pop culture immortality.
Have to be believable. What they do has to be what any normal person would.
We'll uncover the highs and lows of his career, the challenges he faced, and the controversies that continue to surround his name. By the end, you'll not only understand Stan Lee's impact on the comic book industry, but also gain insight into the ongoing battle for creator rights in the world of storytelling. Stay tuned as we dive deep into the legend, the legacy, and the lingering questions about one of the most influential figures in entertainment history. Early life and formative years. Stan Lee's journey began on December 28, 1922, in Manhattan, New York, as Stanley Martin Lieber, the son of Romanian Jewish immigrants. His early years were shaped by financial struggles, as his father, Jack Lieber, a trained dress cutter, struggled to find consistent work, particularly after the Great Depression. The Lieber family's economic hardships forced them into a modest apartment in Washington Heights, where Stan Lee shared a single bedroom with his younger brother Larry. Despite these challenges, young Stan found solace in storytelling. He was captivated by adventure novels, pulp magazines, and swashbuckling films featuring heroes like Errol Flynn. The daring escapades of characters, such as the Scarlet Pimpernel, ignited his imagination, planting the seeds for his future career as a storyteller. From an early age, he exhibited a keen interest in writing. He attended DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, where he excelled in literature and honed his storytelling abilities. Determined to break into the world of writing, he worked various odd jobs to support himself, including writing obituaries, delivering sandwiches, and selling newspaper subscriptions. Despite these mundane tasks, his ambition remained unwavering. A pivotal moment in Lee's life came when he entered and won an essay competition multiple times, catching the attention of the New York Herald Tribune. This recognition fueled his confidence and solidified his desire to become a writer. Graduating early at just 16 and a half, he wasted no time pursuing his dream. His passion for storytelling led him to the WPA Federal Theater Project, a government initiative providing employment to writers and artists during the Great Depression. Through this experience, he gained invaluable exposure to character development and narrative structure, unknowingly preparing himself for the revolutionary impact he would later have on the comic book industry. The path to writing, early ambitions and breakthroughs. Stan Lee's early ambition wasn't necessarily to become a comic book writer. He aspired to be a great novelist. However, fate had other plans. After graduating early, he began searching for opportunities in writing. And in 1939, a family connection helped him land a job as an assistant at Timely Comics, the company that would later become Marvel. At just 17 years old, he entered an industry that was still in its infancy, unaware that he would one day redefine it. His initial responsibilities at Timely were far from glamorous. He fetched lunches, refilled inkwells, proofread scripts, and erased pencil marks from comic book pages. However, his relentless work ethic and enthusiasm caught the attention of his superiors. Within months, he was given the chance to write his first piece, a text filler story in Captain America Comics number 3. It was here that he adopted the pen name Stan Lee, intending to reserve his real name for more serious literary work. As the years went by, Lee's role at Timely expanded. He wrote backup stories, helped with dialogue, and learned the nuances of the comic book business. Then, in 1941, a sudden departure of the lead editor left a gap in the company. At just 19 years old, Stan Lee was promoted to interim editor, a remarkable leap for someone so young. He quickly proved himself, showcasing his ability to manage a growing stable of artists and writers while developing his own narrative style.
I said, yeah. He said, well, we're transferring you to the Army and film.
However, World War II temporarily interrupted his rising career. Lee enlisted in the U.S. Army, serving in the Signal Corps as a writer for military training films and instructional manuals. His creative talents were put to good use, and he earned the unique designation of playwright, one of only 9 servicemen to hold that title. Upon returning to Timely Comics after the war, Lee faced a crossroads. By the late 1940s, the comic book industry was shifting away from superheroes, favoring westerns, horror, and romance comics. Frustrated with the repetitive and uninspired storytelling of the era, he considered leaving the industry altogether. Little did he know, a revolution was just around the corner, one that he would help lead. Entering the world of comics. While Stan Lee had already established himself at Timely Comics, the true turning point in his career, and in the history of comics, arrived in the 1960s. At the time, DC Comics was dominating the industry with its Justice League of America series, and Timely, now rebranded as Atlas Comics, was struggling to keep up. Disillusioned with the industry's direction, Lee contemplated quitting. But his wife, Joan, encouraged him to write one last comic on his own terms, without worrying about corporate expectations. That decision led to the birth of the Fantastic Four in 1961. Unlike the flawless, godlike superheroes of previous decades, the Fantastic Four were deeply human. They had flaws, clashed with each other, and dealt with real-world problems. This fresh approach resonated with readers, sparking a new era in superhero storytelling. Lee's partnership with artist Jack Kirby proved to be a game-changer. Together, they introduced a wave of new heroes, including the Hulk, Thor, and the X-Men. In parallel, Lee collaborated with Steve Ditko to create Spider-Man, perhaps his most iconic character. Unlike traditional superheroes, Peter Parker was a struggling teenager dealing with everyday issues like homework, dating, and self-doubt. The tagline, "With great power comes great responsibility," encapsulated Lee's vision for a new kind of superhero. One who was relatable, vulnerable, and morally complex. This approach revolutionized the comic book industry. Marvel Comics became a cultural phenomenon, drawing in older audiences and transforming superhero comics into a respected art form. Through his storytelling innovations, Stan Lee not only revitalized Marvel, but also redefined what it meant to be a hero. Marvel's Golden Age, revolutionizing superhero storytelling. The 1960s marked the beginning of Marvel's Golden Age, and at the heart of it all was Stan Lee's revolutionary approach to storytelling. Unlike DC Comics superheroes, who were often portrayed as perfect and untouchable, Lee's characters were flawed, relatable, and deeply human. This shift in perspective transformed the superhero genre from escapist fantasy into a medium that reflected real-world struggles and emotions. One of the defining aspects of Lee's storytelling was his ability to merge superhero action with social relevance. He tackled themes of prejudice, personal responsibility, and moral ambiguity, something rare in comics at the time. The X-Men, co-created with Jack Kirby, served as an allegory for civil rights issues, with characters like Professor X and Magneto reflecting the ideological divide between Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Similarly, Spider-Man resonated with young readers because Peter Parker wasn't just a hero. He was a struggling student burdened by guilt, responsibility, and financial hardship. Lee also revolutionized the way comics were produced with his unique Marvel method of collaboration. Instead of writing full scripts, he provided artists like Kirby and Steve Ditko with a loose plot outline. allowing them to illustrate and develop the story visually before Lee added dialogue and narration. While this method led to some controversy over creative credit, it resulted in dynamic, fast-paced storytelling that set Marvel apart. Under Lee's guidance, Marvel introduced the Avengers, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and many other now legendary characters. By the late 1960s, Marvel had overtaken DC Comics in sales and influence, cementing Lee's status as a pioneer in the comic book world. His bold storytelling choices not only entertained readers, but also elevated superhero comics into a powerful medium for addressing societal issues. The challenges and controversies. Despite his immense contributions, Stan Lee's career was not without its share of controversies. While he was the face of Marvel Comics, his role in the creative process was often questioned, with artists like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko feeling overshadowed by Lee's growing public recognition. One of the biggest points of contention was the issue of creator credit. In interviews, Lee would often discuss the creation of Marvel's most iconic characters, sometimes implying that he was the sole architect behind them. However, artists like Kirby and Ditko argued that their contributions were equally, if not more, significant. Kirby, in particular, expressed frustration over how Lee received the majority of the credit for the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, and Thor, despite Kirby's heavy involvement in shaping their designs and stories. Legal battles also plagued Marvel for years. Many artists and writers from the early days of comics signed contracts that prevented them from owning their creations or earning royalties from their success. While Marvel raked in billions from comic book sales, and later, blockbuster movies, the original creators often struggled financially. The fight for creator rights intensified when Jack Kirby's family sought to reclaim copyrights to his work, leading to a prolonged legal battle with Marvel and its parent company, Disney. Even Steve Ditko, the co-creator of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, distanced himself from Marvel, living in relative obscurity for much of his later life. He famously refused to take part in Stan Lee's public celebrations, believing that his contributions were not properly acknowledged. Although Lee undeniably played a crucial role in shaping Marvel's success, these controversies highlight the larger issue of fairness in the comic book industry. While he became a beloved public figure, the debate over creator recognition remains a significant part of his legacy. The rise of Marvel and global popularity. By the 1970s, Marvel Comics had grown into an industry titan, and Stan Lee's influence extended far beyond the comic book pages. As editor-in-chief and later publisher, he spearheaded Marvel's expansion into television, animation, and merchandise, ensuring that Marvel characters became household names. During this time, Lee became Marvel's public ambassador, traveling across the country for comic conventions and college lectures. His energetic personality and signature catchphrases, like Excelsior and True Believers, made him a fan favorite. Unlike the more corporate approach of DC Comics, Marvel positioned itself as a company that truly cared about its readers. Through Lee's Stan's Soapbox column, he directly communicated with fans, addressing not just comics, but also real-world issues like racism and equality. One of Lee's boldest moves was pushing for greater diversity in comics. Under his leadership, Marvel introduced Black Panther, the first mainstream black superhero, and Luke Cage, the first black hero to have his own title. He also championed female-led books like Ms. Marvel and the Uncanny X-Men, further expanding Marvel's reach. In the 1980s and 1990s, Marvel entered a period of financial turbulence, but Lee remained a key figure. Although he stepped down as editor-in-chief in 1972, he continued to oversee Marvel's film and TV projects. This era saw Marvel characters appear in animated shows like X-Men, the animated series, and Spider-Man, the animated series, further cementing their place in pop culture. As the 21st century approached, Marvel was on the brink of something even bigger, the birth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. While Lee had no direct creative control over the films, his influence was undeniable. The explosion of superhero movies in the 2000s and 2010s turned Marvel into a global entertainment powerhouse, and at the center of it all, Stan Lee remained a beloved icon. Cameo appearances and cultural icon status. Even if you've never read a Marvel comic, chances are you've seen Stan Lee on the big screen. His cameos in Marvel films became a signature tradition, delighting audiences with every appearance. Whether he was a hot dog vendor in X-Men 2000, a security guard in The Incredible Hulk 2008, or a Watcher informant in Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2, 2017, his brief but memorable roles were a highlight for Marvel fans. These cameos weren't just fun Easter eggs. They symbolized Lee's lifelong dedication to the Marvel Universe. His presence in the films was a reminder of where these characters came from and the creative vision that helped shape them. With each appearance, he bridged the gap between old-school comic book fans and new generations introduced to Marvel through the MCU. Beyond his film appearances, Lee became a pop culture icon in his own right. He was a regular guest at comic conventions, participated in interviews, and even voiced himself in animated series. His influence stretched into video games, TV shows, and even comic book-inspired fashion.
And yet make each one totally different than the other.
His role as a public figure also helped redefine how comic book creators were perceived. Before Lee, writers and artists often worked behind the scenes with little recognition. But his rise to celebrity status proved that comic book creators could be just as influential as the characters they created. Even after his passing in 2018, Lee's legacy continued. His final on-screen cameo in Avengers Endgame 2019 was a fitting farewell, and Marvel has continued to pay tribute to him in various ways, including Easter eggs in films and heartfelt acknowledgments from fans and creators alike. His cameos may have been brief, but their impact was long-lasting, just like his influence on the world of storytelling. Retirement, health struggles, and personal loss. As the years went by, Stan Lee's once boundless energy began to wane. Though he remained an active and beloved figure in the comic book world, age and health issues gradually took their toll. In September 2012, Lee underwent pacemaker surgery, which forced him to cancel several scheduled appearances at conventions. This marked the beginning of a period of declining health that would eventually lead to his retirement from the public eye. Despite his physical struggles, Lee remained dedicated to his work. He continued to make public appearances, grant interviews, and attend Marvel-related events well into his 90s. However, by 2017, the effects of age became more pronounced, leading him to scale back his engagements significantly. Fans who had long cherished his presence at conventions and film premieres could sense that the era of Stan Lee as the ever-present Marvel ambassador was coming to an end. The most devastating blow came on July 6, 2017, when Lee's beloved wife, Joan Lee, passed away at the age of 95 due to complications from a stroke. Their marriage had lasted nearly 70 years, and Joan had been more than just a life partner. She was his confidant, his greatest supporter, and an essential influence on his work. It was Joan who had encouraged him to write the Fantastic Four, preventing him from leaving the comic book industry at a time when he had grown disillusioned. Her death left a profound void in Lee's life. Those close to him noted that he was never quite the same afterward. While he continued to make public appearances, there was a visible sadness in his demeanor. Many fans speculated that losing Joan had taken away much of his creative drive and enthusiasm. Despite his personal loss, Lee pressed on, determined to honor the legacy he had built. However, his final years would be marred by legal battles, allegations of elder abuse, and a bitter struggle over his estate. It was a tragic and complicated ending for a man who had brought so much joy to the world through his storytelling. He controversial 2023 documentary. Even after his passing, Stan Lee's legacy remained a topic of debate. In 2023, a Disney-produced documentary titled Stan Lee was released, intended as a tribute to his extraordinary life and contributions to Marvel Comics. However, instead of being universally celebrated, the film reignited long-standing tensions within the comic book community, particularly regarding the issue of creator rights and credit distribution. Critics of the documentary argued that it presented an overly polished and one-sided version of Lee's story, downplaying the contributions of key collaborators like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. Many felt that the film portrayed Lee as the sole creative force behind Marvel's success, while failing to adequately acknowledge the essential role played by the artists who visually brought his characters to life. Jack Kirby's family was particularly vocal about their discontent. Kirby, who co-created the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the Hulk, and many other Marvel icons, had long struggled to receive proper recognition. While Lee became a global celebrity, Kirby often worked in relative obscurity, receiving only a fraction of the financial rewards. His heirs argued that the documentary further erased his contributions, continuing a long-standing pattern of Marvel favoring Lee's narrative. Similarly, Steve Ditko, the co-creator of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, had famously distanced himself from Marvel due to creative disputes. While Lee's charisma made him the public face of Marvel, Ditko remained a reclusive figure who rarely sought attention. The documentary's portrayal of Spider-Man's creation largely credited Lee, minimizing Ditko's artistic and storytelling influence. The broader issue, industry-wide creator exploitation. Stan Lee's legacy is just one piece of a much larger issue, the long-standing exploitation of comic book creators. For decades, the industry operated under a system where writers and artists were treated as work-for-hire employees, meaning that they surrendered all rights to their creations in exchange for a one-time payment. This model led to tragic situations where legendary creators saw little to no financial benefit from their own work. While Marvel Studios made billions from films based on characters like the Avengers and Spider-Man, many of the original creators received only a fraction of that wealth. In some cases, they were forced to fight for basic recognition. One of the most well-known examples of this injustice is the case of Jack Kirby. Despite co-creating many of Marvel's most profitable franchises, Kirby spent years battling for the rights to his own artwork and character contributions. His family's legal struggles with Marvel and Disney became a symbol of the industry's failure to fairly compensate its creators. The issue extends beyond past generations. Modern comic book writers and artists continue to face challenges, often working under strict contracts that limit their earnings, even when their characters become global phenomena. The rise of social media has given creators a platform to voice their frustrations, leading to movements like #ComicSpoken, where industry professionals share their stories of unfair treatment. Lee's final days and lasting impact. On November 12, 2018, the world bid farewell to Stan Lee. He passed away at the age of 95 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles due to cardiac arrest, respiratory failure, and complications from pneumonia. His death marked the end of an era, leaving behind an immeasurable impact on the comic book industry and pop culture as a whole. Even in his final days, Lee remained deeply connected to his work. Just 2 days before his passing, his longtime colleague and Marvel successor, Roy Thomas, visited him to discuss an upcoming book. In what would be one of his last recorded conversations, Lee told Thomas, "God bless. Take care of my boy." Many fans speculated that he was referring to Spider-Man, his most cherished creation. His passing was met with an outpouring of tributes from fans, celebrities, and fellow creators. Marvel Studios dedicated films like Avengers, Endgame to his memory, and his final cameo in the film served as a poignant farewell. The company continued to pay homage to him in various ways, including Easter eggs in Marvel movies and heartfelt messages from the actors and filmmakers he had inspired. Stan Lee's legacy is both a celebration and a cautionary tale. His contributions to storytelling are undeniable, But his story also highlights the challenges faced by creators in an industry that has often overlooked them. As fans, we have the power to push for change, to demand fair treatment for writers and artists, to celebrate the full history of comics, and to ensure that future generations of creators receive the recognition they deserve. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts on Stan Lee's legacy and the broader issue of creator rights. Let's keep this conversation going and continue celebrating the power of storytelling. Excelsior.